was a child of the 80s. I grew up loving those classic Spielbergian coming-of-age tales. And that was something that I wanted to bring to Bumblebee.
We get to go back in time with Bumblebee and see where he came from and see him in his original form.
Travis is taking the story back to the beginning, set in the time period where I first fell in love with Transformers.
To take this big, expansive franchise and to focus in on a corner of that canvas, we really get to understand who Bumblebee is and why people love him.
This is why you're here, Bee.
Let me tell you something. A driver don't pick the car. Car pick the driver. It's a mystical bond between man and machine. It's a mystical bond between man and machine.
You got people out there who need you. This is why you're here, Bee.
You know, beat music can help you say what you're feeling. Try this.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie. Comic-Con is coming up. We got another Transformers preview. They're doing a panel, so they'll probably release more footage with Starscream, because even though we all saw him in the last big trailer, he looks like classic 80s Gen 1 Starscream. They haven't officially said who he is or who's going to be voicing him during the movie. There were a couple new Decepticons that they revealed recently too, and the voice actors that were playing them. So if you're finding me for the first time, be sure to subscribe to get all the Comic-Con videos. It is going to be crazy next week. And speaking of Haley Steinfeld, obviously the star of the Transformers film, not including Bumblebee. Really, it's the Transformers that are the stars of this franchise. Everybody's known that for a long time. But she's the character that they're using to ground the film in the real world. Like, this film is the Ant-Man and the Wasp of the Transformers universe.
The war has begun, and one question remains. Where is Ant-Man?
Like, you have this big string of Michael Bay $150 million plus films. People starting to get a little fatigued, so they want to try something a little bit different. They go smaller instead of going bigger. So I do believe the rumor that if this film does well, it will serve as sort of a soft reboot, jumping off point for the rest of the Transformers films going forward. So what you would expect out of this, though, like, even though Optimus Prime is supposed to be featured somewhere in the film, he's not the biggest character. It's really Bumblebee and Starscream, probably the two biggest characters, meaning they might also reference Megatron, but I'm not expecting to see him. They really are going back to the board with this film. Like, forget about all the crazy King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table that you saw during the last big film. I think they're just forgetting about that prehistory and sweeping it under the rug, which I think is totally fine. I think they're trying to get back to that Steven Spielberg boy in his car, albeit with Haley Steinfeld, that Spielberg wanted to do for that first Transformers film when he was still going to direct it.
Let me tell you something, son. A driver don't pick the cars. Cars pick the driver. It's a mystical bond between man and machine.
Remember when he announced it a long time ago, but then Michael Bay came on and he sort of took over the franchise? So you had this sort of E.T. vibe mixed with a Michael Bay directed film. Like, obviously he directed the film, so no matter how much input Steven Spielberg gives him, it's still going to look like a Michael Bay film. But by the time we got to the second film, Steven Spielberg was really just an executive producer in a financial sense. Like, he earned a percentage of all the Transformers movies, but he wasn't really involved with the franchise creatively, so it stopped being that really classic Spielbergian type of movie and being totally Michael Bay, which regardless of how this movie turns out, I will give it bonus points for just pivoting away from all that madness. I think the more apt comparison for this Bumblebee movie is they're going for a more Iron Giant vibe, which is totally awesome. Still one of my favorite superhero films, especially for the fact that it references superhero films within that film.
You are who you choose to be.
Speaking of which, Haley Steinfeld in Transformers, you could kind of consider it a superhero subgenre. She's also playing Spider-Gwen in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for Sony. They're doing a panel. There'll be a new trailer for that too, where we'll probably get some more dialogue for her.
Hey guys,
Okay, who are you?
I'm Gwen Stacy.
Come on. How many more spider people are there?
Save it for Comic-Con.
What's Comic-Con?
Let's go!
So if you're a big fan of Haley Steinfeld, there'll be a whole bunch of her all over Comic-Con next week. But the brand new Decepticons that they announced are big characters during the film are called Shatter and Dropkick. Shatter turns into a red Plymouth satellite voiced by Angela Bassett, very recognizable voice, you'll probably detect her right away. And then Dropkick turns into a blue AMC Javelin and is voiced by Justin Theroux, who also has a fairly recognizable voice. So this is what their car designs will look like. They might be like a subtle variant on it because the movie's taking place during the 80s, but most of these cars came out of the 70s. So they are pivoting away from like the crazy supercars that Michael Bay would put in his film. Like no more Bugattis. This film is taking place in a coastal town in the 80s that doesn't look like it's super rich. So the cars that the Transformers and the Decepticons turn into reflect that. I'm guessing that also means that if Optimus Prime physically appears during the movie, he's going to turn into the classic Freightliner FL-86 over-the-top truck that he turned into during Gen 1. Pretty much everybody turning into the Gen 1 versions of their characters, which I know there's been a lot of discussion about the type of jet that Starscream is transforming into, because originally he was an F-15 Eagle, he was an F-14 Tomcat at one point, he was a Russian fighter jet, then during Transformers Prime, he was an F-16 Eagle. Based on the forked tail there, I'm guessing that they're going for F-16 Eagle, but you guys can let me know in the comments which version of the jet do you think that he's turning into. So what'll happen is there'll be a schedule video that I'll post early next week because there will be a lot of stuff dropping. There's going to be a Bumblebee panel on Friday night. They'll definitely drop some more footage. I'm guessing mostly to highlight the Decepticons and the Starscream character, like pretty much most of the characters that they haven't put in the previous trailers. I would be surprised if they stuck Optimus Prime in that, but because they're trying to go big, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a whole bunch more John Cena in it too. While you wait for everything, click here to watch Tom Holland give away some of the plot of Avengers 4, and click here for new Venom from Comic-Con. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.